Soundness. Long ago, I was interviewing Michael Eisner and for the Harvard Business Review when he was the CEO of Disney. And at the end, I said, hey, I'm actually running a company here. I'm running HBR, and I'm just wondering if you have any advice for me personally about what I should do to be a really good leader. And he sighed deeply and listen to this. He said to me, hire emotionally healthy people. And I honestly, I've thought about that piece of advice more in my career than almost any other piece of advice I've gotten. He said it deeply sighing. And all I could think of was, he managed a lot of creative people, and creative people sometimes come with issues. All right. And I managed writers, so I saw a lot of issues, and it makes them great. On the one hand, their emotional complexity makes them great at being creative, but it makes them really difficult in organizational situations. And I came to discover every single year as a leader more and more how important it was to have emotionally sound people. Now, this is not to say anything negative about people who have a very common situation today, which around anxiety. Anxiety is real. I have anxiety in my family. I have a heart for it. It's real. But there's other issues around soundness here that I'm talking about, and you are an exemplar of them. And so the way I describe soundness is around positive energy, right? Sort of a kind of inherent rational optimism, okay? Because manic energy, which is sometimes mistaken for positive energy, is bad, bad, bad. But positive energy, which is rational energy, self-awareness is a huge part of soundness, integrity, and resilience. Okay, that is soundness. Just to repeat again, so you can think about this for yourself at home, is a positive energy. If you've ever been told you have hostile or negative or toxic energy, take note. It matters. Self-awareness, very unfortunately, a wonderful thing that you you don't know if you're self-aware by definition, okay? You just don't, because people who are not self-aware are unable to say, I'm not self-aware, okay? So you need to ask other people if you're self-aware, or the world will tell you. Integrity, which I have a different definition of, which we'll get to, and resilience, which is the ability to come back from hard stuff, because hard stuff happens. And actually, let's just start there, Ellen. Like, when you think about it, what was one of the hardest things that's happened in your career or your life?
I would say I had somebody working for me, with me for 18 years, and out of nowhere, she decided that she was going to go out on her own. And that was pretty hard. It was shocking and pretty hard.
What was so hard about it? Like,
It just, I had not, for 18 years, I had been used to having somebody work side by side
she
with
was your
me.
partner.
She wasn't actually my partner. She was an associate, but we worked together for so long, and we had a synergy. And there were a few little issues because our goals did not actually align. Apropos of this podcast,
Yes.
So you have to work with someone whose goals align with yours and be able to work together with them.
Right.
But we kind of did,
All
and
right.
I was really stunned when she told me that, and that was a big shock to me. It worked out fine,
All right, I
but
know.
it was tough.
Well, there's your positive energy sort of going in and interpreting it. But for you to mention it as soon as you did, the way it is, there must have been some feelings of hurt or maybe even betrayal.
Sure.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So how'd you come back from it? Did you just rationalize your way through it with the resilience, or how'd you bounce back? Did you turn to friends? What was the?
Yeah, I turned to friends, but I had ideas immediately. In fact, we were actually on vacation, having just landed, and we were in the airport, and she called me, and I thought maybe it was about a patient that was there. And while we were walking, we were just on the street, she told me. So I was across the country, and it really came as a shock. And my husband was laughing because within an hour, I had a plan.
Yeah.
I already had a plan.
Well, here's the thing. Okay, this just goes for us. So here's my definition of resilience. See what you think about it. I think resilience does take grit, but I also think it takes forgiveness. You've got to immediately forgive the person or forgive yourself for screwing up. And that to me is the essential missing part when people talk about resilience. Resilience is not just, oh, I'm gonna overcome, I'm gonna be strong, I'm gonna get over it. It's also like there has to be this letting go of what went wrong. And in your case, what you're describing is this saying. You basically said, okay, it's over. I'm not even gonna think about how she hurt me really, or dwell on it. I think there was probably some form of forgiveness, whatever. She had her reasons, right?
Right. And it's very hard you can't rationalize that with someone. They feel the way they do, and you can try to talk it out. But once you get to that point, it's done. So now live with it and move on and figure out next steps.
When I see people who are struggling with resilience and having a lot of trouble coming back from something, I think they have not done this essential piece of either forgiving themselves, because sometimes we screw up and fall down because we blew it, okay? I raise my hand, number one, I've done this a million times, because why? I'm human. And the other reason is that somebody did us wrong. somebody hurt us, somebody, left us. My first husband left me, and I had to did eventually just say, of course it all worked out. Yeah, it didn't feel like it was going to work out in the moment. And now I count him as a really good friend because I was able to say, we must forgive. Why? It's not on us to forgive. We've got to give it to God to forgive, but that's a whole other podcast. But I would say that resilience defined outside of including this word forgiveness to me is only half of it. And you just did that. I mean, you're a perfect example of it. The other is self-awareness.
Yeah, I mean, I'm very well aware of my shortcomings,
Yeah.
and I have many, but there are things I've learned having been in practice for so long. And I like to say that one of the things I try to live by is the Peter principle, which I'm sure you're familiar with, which is that people rise to their level of incompetence.
Yes.
And when I was young, I didn't realize that there were people who just couldn't do certain things.
Right.
And my attempts to get them to do them were not going to work.
Right.
So now what I try to do with people that work with me is to get them to be the best versions of themselves,
Right.
because they can't be me or you.
Mhm.
They just are going to be who they are.
Yeah.
And I think that's a helpful limit. But I also feel strongly that I hold myself to the same standards that I hold everyone who works for me.
Yeah.
And I really think, and this may sound obnoxious, but it's really the same all the time. So when I have a problem with someone in my office and I explain what I need them to do,
Yeah.
it's usually the same thing that gets repeated, and it's always a good reason that I want them to do it. When you're in medicine,
Right.
mistakes are not good.
Right.
You know, I guess people make them, but we try not to.
Right.
And you try to do everything possible not to. And that means you have to cover all your bases. I live by the checklist manifesto. I don't know if you've ever read that.
Yeah.
Atul Gawande, it's like my favorite book. And anybody who comes to work for me, I give them that book. They have to read it. You've got to live like you're a pilot. You've got to check every box when you're with patients. And if you don't and a mistake happens, you're screwed. And
This
patient
is
could be too.
this is the exemplar of self-awareness. Is you're like sort of saying people act this way. Here's these guardrails we'll put in so that they don't go to their worst selves. And
Right.
I mean, and you're asking the people who work for you. Look, you say I'm self-aware. I would like you to be self-aware too. Here are some techniques for it.
Right.
I mean, one of the things also is to get a bead, dear listeners, on how self-aware we are. And the only way you can do that is to ask people who you love and trust. I'm just doing a little test right here to find out how self-aware I might be. And I really need you to be honest, because there's no way for me to know this myself. On a scale from 1 to 10, where am I in this part of my journey? And make it easy for them to answer the truth for you. And
Right.
so,
Sometimes it's surprising. I've done that. We throw out questionnaires to my employees, anonymous, and you get answers, and it's like, what?
I know.
It's not me, but obviously they perceive it that way.
Right.
So those are things I need to address. But I have an incredible staff, very loyal and wonderful staff, and I think that too is a key to success, is having the people around you
Yeah.
contribute, because what do they say? There's no I in team.
Yes, yeah, for sure.